you had told us that potentially, possibly, maybe abuse of official capacity, right?
Correct.
Potential, maybe, who knows? Acceptance of gift to a public servant?
Correct.
No clue if that was true or not, was there? You had no clue, did you?
Can I explain the purpose of the memo?
I'm asking you whether you had any clue that any of those things were true.
Based upon the information provided by the 3 witnesses that we had interviewed, yes, it appeared that it was true.
You thought it was true, so you had probable cause to make an arrest, and that's what you did, right?
No, a preliminary investigation is to determine whether or not to move forward with an investigation. That was the stage we were at.
Probable cause means you have enough for an arrest, right?
Probable cause would give rise to justification for an arrest.
You didn't have justification for an arrest, did you?
We were at the point of making a determination of whether to move forward with an investigation.
There was no indictment, right?
Correct.
There was no arrest, right?
Correct.
And yet, you came here in front of all these fine people and told us a bunch of maybes. Isn't that right?
I came here and answered questions about the memo.
Mm-hmm. And looking at this litany that the lawyer wanted to put into evidence, one of those was possibly, maybe, who knows, engaging in organized criminal activity, right?
That is something I outlined in the memo.
That sounds bad, doesn't it?
It's an offense under the penal code.
That sounds like there's something really going on bad at the AG's office, right?
That is your characterization of that.
That's something you'd never want to be a part of, right?
I don't understand your question.
I'm just trying to figure out. I mean, if that's what's going on at the AG's office, if you really believe that, you certainly would never want to be a part of it, right?
I'm not an employee of the Attorney General's office.
I mean, my point is, you would never engage in such activity, would you? This maybe activity you talked about?
The activity that was being alleged on the part of Mr. Paxton?
You would never engage in any of these so-called potential crimes yourself, would you?
Correct, I would not.
You would never want to be a part of anything like that, would you?
That is correct.
You wouldn't want to be associated with something like that, would you?
That is correct.
You have dedicated your life, you claim, to the rule of law, right?
Correct.
And so there is no way you would ever want to be associated or affiliated with that kind of criminal conduct. Isn't that right?
I'm not following your line of questioning. You're talking about the conduct described in the memo about Mr. Paxton after the interview of the 3 witnesses?
I'm talking about organized criminal activity. You'd never want to be a part of that.
Correct.
I mean, if you really believe that, you certainly wouldn't want to be a part of it, right?
Correct.
You applied for a job at the AG's office, didn't you?
I did.
Let's make sure we let that sink in. You applied for a job after this silly memo you wrote, didn't you?
Yes.
Let it sink in. You wrote this silly memo where you talked about potential violations of law, and months later you applied to work at the AG's office, didn't you?
That is correct.
And you know what the kicker is? Who wrote your letter of recommendation?
Margaret Moore. She wrote a general letter of recommendation that I could use with any employer. It was not specific for that job.
She wrote you a letter of recommendation. This whole thing should be dismissed. Don't you agree?
No.
Yeah. I think the point has been made. Your Honor, I pass the witness.
What were you going to do with this case if it was going to go nowhere? What did you do?
I decided to send it to David Maxwell.
And by the time you were going to send it to Mr. Maxwell, how long had you known him, and what was your view of his competence and ability, et cetera?
Well, I don't remember how long
And I want you to get back to that microphone.
I said I don't remember how long. I knew of his reputation because I worked in the AG's office. I thought very highly of him. I knew that he was a former Ranger, and I'd working with the Rangers. He had a very, very stellar reputation as an investigator. I decided to send it to him because I was quite confident that he would view this complaint the same way I did.
And so what you thought when you sent it, when you came up with the idea of sending it to the AG's office, why did you send it to the AG's office instead of just politely telling Mr. Paul, no dice, nice to have met you, we're not going to do anything?
Because I didn't want to offend Mr. Paxton.
If, in fact, Mr. Paul had come on his own, not being sponsored with the Attorney General, and made the same complaint, what would you have done?
We would have sent a rejection letter.
Pardon me?
We would have sent a rejection letter.
What did you expect is what I'm asking. Not somebody else, but what did you expect when you sent that kind of language over there?
Objection, speculation.
No, I asked what she expected. I'm not asking her what she expected. Let me put it this way. What did you expect and want to happen?
Overruled. Go ahead.
I expected David Maxwell and any of the criminal lawyers in the AG's office would view this matter as absolutely baseless and not worthy of investigation. I expected it to be a dead issue on arrival.
And in fact, did you give Mr. Clemmer instructions to call Mr. Paxton ahead of time and warn him it's coming? Mr. Maxwell, not Mr. Patton.
Yes, I did.
And
I did not want David Maxwell to think that I didn't have the good enough sense to know this was ridiculous. I did not find this allegation of a broad conspiracy among all these agencies to have any merit.
Based on no investigation, true?
Correct.
Yep. So what you decided to do, rather than investigate it, you decided to refer it back to the AG's office, right?
I decided to send it to David Maxwell.
Yeah, you said part of the allegation was against the Texas Rangers, right?
Yes.
So you sent it to the Hall of Fame Texas Ranger, didn't you?
Well, he was the chief investigator in the AG's office.
Trying to get this right. You thought it would be inappropriate to send the allegation to the Texas Rangers, so you instead sent it to the Texas Ranger, right?
What I'd really I think would be truthful here is that I wasn't concerned about sending it to the Texas Rangers because it wasn't worth sending. I did think that the chief investigator in the Attorney General's office would view it the same way.
So I'm just trying to remember who it was sent to. So one of the allegations was against the U.S. Attorney's office?
Yes.
And the referral was to a former U.S. attorney, right?
I don't know to whom you...
Mr. Penley, a former U.S. attorney?
Mr. Penley was not named in that letter. It was specifically sent to David Maxwell.
Well, we all know now, and I know you weren't here and you wouldn't know this, but just so we're clear, the allegation, among others, was against Texas Rangers and U.S. Attorney's office, and you sent it to the AG's office, where the head of both of the divisions that would have looked at this would have been a Ranger and a U.S. Attorney. Did you realize that?
I didn't know Mr. Penley.